Welcome to Familiar Territory, an anime podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. Here we talk about the history and influence of anime, as well as review anime new and old. So grab your talking cap and transform into some comfy clothes as we step into a familiar territory. My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen.
G is not in this one's title.
It's not at all. We're reviewing the 4th season of Symphogear AXZ.
Yes.
Subtitled, By Shedding Many Tears, the reality you face is...
And that's it. Another fucking unfinished sentence.
Yeah, so sorry, we did, if you're expecting the same exact joke from the past 2 reviews that we did, I apologize, but we axed that joke.
I hate that.
Was it any worse than the G or GX?
No, it's so much better. So we finished watching the 4th season of Symphogear in our Symphogear saga.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. Like, just putting my hands down, this is easily the best season of Symphogear.
Mm-hmm. That we've seen so far. You've looked ahead to the reviews of the 5th season, the last season, as far as we know. And apparently its score is very high on my anime list, so maybe we'll even one-up it from here, but right now I think we're satisfied.
So Symphogear AXZ is came out in I think 2017. And it is a continuation of what we saw of GX. The biggest whack shit about this one is it somehow tied together all the convoluted mess that the first 3 seasons were.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've talked a lot about when regarding Symphogear is they either cared a lot or they didn't care at all. And I think that this season shows that they cared a lot. It
almost too much in some fashion.
Now it's a very fan servicey episode, but not like GX where there's just a lot of terrible like sexualization shots, but more of like wink wink nudge nudge, do you remember this thing? Or haha, do you remember this thing? And I think it came together really well. I was hyped as shit.
Yeah, this is Symphogear Christmas. Like, if you like anything out of Symphogear, then congratulations, the show creators did too, and so you're gonna see it. If you like any hand-picked, like, minor character, basically, then they're going to do something neat in this season, and actually, like, meaningful to what's going on.
Yeah.
It's quite surprising. But hey, everybody benefits from that. Speaking of which, we're going to talk very positively about this show, looking forward to the review, but since we're still kicking things off, would you say that this is a fair starting place because it is like a stronger season?
No,
or
absolutely
would all the
not.
tethering stuff just confuse people?
The reason that this one is really good is because by the time you get to season 4, you already have Symphogear Stockholm Syndrome, where you're just like in it, right? And this, I know I said the same thing about GX, but I think this is the real payoff of watching all the other seasons. Because GX is better if you know the world because of how ridiculous it is. This is better if you know the lore, which is wild.
Yeah.
So
considering that we've had season reviews where we're like, wow, they just don't care at all. For us to have to double back and say, well, they sure do now, and they make it work. That's impressive.
Yeah. So I'll give a quick plot synopsis on how weird this one gets. So first off, I think the beginning of this one trumps the GX start. So essentially, Hibiki gets taken by a helicopter to go fight an actual literal Nazi in a South American village that is being taken over by said Nazi. And you see the 3 OG Symphogear users, Chris, Tsubasa, and Hibiki, just punching tanks. And what's wild is they somehow make it very intimidating. One of my favorite scenes from this part is when Hibiki is in like a ditch and there are 2 tanks shooting at her, and every time they fire, she just punches their shells behind her, and there's a big explosion, and she's just constantly walking forward, and the tanks are retreating. I just think that's fun.
Yeah, it is the, oh, you're approaching me of Symphogear.
It is. You get to see Ogawa do some shit, and anytime we get to see my favorite ninja boy karate chop people is a good time for me. And boy, does he karate chop people.
It's a beautiful, beautiful way to start the season. It might not be a concert going wrong, but it does not matter. It's so high octane and ridiculous that it works beautifully.
There's actually not any there's no concerts in this one because Maria and Tsubasa both left music, and they didn't give like a reason for them to come back. They weren't focused on like, oh well, we gotta do another concert. They kept it. It's not like it's like the bare minimum, but it's good.
Yeah, it's weirdly committed.
Yeah.
Now that does unfortunately mean that the one minor character that you will not get any service out of, no Tony Glazer.
Yeah, no Tony Glazer, which is really disappointing because.
But it's okay. Tony's taking a holiday off, you know.
And so it kind of goes from there. You are introduced to a group that was talked about in Symphogear G, which is the Bavarian Illuminati, and it is comprised of, as I read, a trans lesbian polycule.
Accurate.
It is comprised of basically some immortal alchemists.
So we have Saint Germain, and we have Cagliostro, and we have Prelati.
And they are the only ones like just well, and then you have 2 other ones, but we'll get into them.
Yes.
And they are old people, like
centuries old.
Yeah, centuries old. So I don't think Saint Germain is trans. No, because she was a little girl. But Cagliostro and Prelati are canonically trans. And it's in a very interesting way. So a lot of times when anime does trans characters, they kind of focus on like the gender dysphoria aspect of trans identities, where it's like, I've always felt like this and I haven't been able to express it. I feel like these characters are more of like the gender euphoria part. So the characters were like, they're like 500 years old, and they used alchemy to get the perfect bodies in terms of like fighting power and powerful energy, and it made them women. Now both Cagliostra and Prelati are just like, yeah, we're women now and we absolutely love it. And they are really fun characters. They are easily the best villains, and I know we said that about the autoscorers too. But the autoscorers were fun popcorn villains. I actually really like these villains as like villains. So
we have a branch here. I would like to talk more about Cagliostro in particular and Prelati, and I would like to talk about how the Bavarian Illuminati trio shakes up compared to the autoscorers. Do you want to come back to that later after we get to a plot synopsis? Okay.
Yeah, I think I wanted just to talk about how much we love these characters because they're awesome. But I kind of want to when we talk about like the character arcs, because this is the first time we see like actual character arcs in the villains. I feel like they can fit into the character arc discussion. Yeah.
Before the villains have basically been a flat line until like or at least like a very like low slope until a like motorcycle leap moment where they pull off some sweet stunt for redemption. But here it's a little more of a sine wave where things are going up and down and up and down. The villains are actually sort of plotting and then reconsidering and plotting. There's just more motion in it than other seasons, so you
And-
know. It's not high art, but it doesn't have to be because it's Symphogear. And Symphogear is all about hot wiring your brain to enjoy whatever the hell is going on.
And like, I mean, like the Symphogear G villains, I guess, made it into the main cast, but even they were never really villains.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was fooled on that.
So the Bavarian Illuminati is hellbent on getting the power of gods, and they want to get the power of gods to remove the curse of Belial and bring about no control on humans. They're basically the idea of eliminating hierarchies. They're very base level anarchists. And this is the first time we hear about the curse of Belial since the first season. And it doesn't really talk too much about it in season 1, 2, and 3. And if they did, I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
But the curse of Belial is a real thing. And it prevents humanity from having peace because they just cannot. There's an actual curse preventing them from coming to a consensus or like peace. So that's neat. And so the Bavarian Illuminati are doing their best to steal the Antikythera, which is a real artifact that I've actually seen before and worked with, which is really nuts. And the Antikythera in real life, we assume was sort of some sort of it's a very simple computer that was around during the ancient Grecian times, and it was used, we think, to monitor star charts and weather, but in Symphogear it's used to power a robot.
Well, and then the robot is then used for star charts and very similar things.
Yes,
but
which is neat, but
there is still the magic power boost element to it that definitely is there.
And that robot is Tiki, like Antikythera.
Mm-hmm.
Good pun.
How long did it take before you realized that? Because it took me till like the last couple episodes.
It took me until because she goes Tiki Antiki, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's a pun.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a pun until she specifically said the pun. I wonder if the writers were like, are they gonna get it?
Knowing Symphogear, they have full confidence that everyone will understand everything that's given to them. They just have pure faith in anybody who watches their show,
as they should. And so you get the last member of the Bavarian Illuminati, the true leader. They call the director, and that's Adam Weishaupt. I don't know how to. I think it's a German last name. And he is great. the first time you see him, he transmutes gold to cause a nuke, and to start the transmutation, he makes himself naked. And he's just jacked. He has a hat.
And that's his whole character.
It really is.
No, sorry, the hat also is an important part of his character.
Because the hat stays on during sex. He never loses his hat, and it also can be used as a weapon. I don't know. He's great. So he is based off of the real-life German founder of the real Bavarian Illuminati. So Adam Weishaupt is a real person, and he started the Illuminati. Oh, supposedly. He founded the Illuminati on May 1st, 1776. Which is dope. Once again, this is where the show, you start to realize it's a lot more, it takes itself a little bit more seriously than you would give it credit for, because all of the Illuminati people are named after real philosophers.
Yeah, the alternate history stuff that Symphogear has dabbled with before is actually finally being organized together. They're taking all of these, leftover strings, and someone on staff or some people essentially like perform the Herculean task of actually knitting that into a complete quilt.
Yeah. So to give you a rundown of who they're all based off of. So Saint Germain is based off of the Count of Saint Germain, who was a European adventurer with an interest in science, alchemy, and the arts. He's actually his real name was unknown, and he's sort of obscure, which is pretty dope. He's like super shadowy as a historical figure, and
only hipsters know about this ancient philosophy. Sorry.
And then Alessandro Cagliostro was a French magician. So that's fun.
French magician sounds like a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Like you confuse it with dark magician to get like bastard magician or something.
That's fun.
You combine dark magician and French magician, you get pretentious magician.
Well, that's only if he's Parisian. And then Prelati is based off of Francois Prelati, who's an Italian priest and alchemist who took part in the murders committed by Giles de Reyes in the 15th century. He also might have been a sexual partner for Giles. It's really great because on the Wikipedia page for Francois Prelati, that's basically his entire Wikipedia page, except for the times that he appeared in an anime, which is Symphogear AXZ and Fate Strange Fake.
Gonna say Fate.
Yep, and Fate. Yep. So they're fun. They're and this is where they start, like you said, they start to go a little bit deeper into that alternate history. And so they are trying to summon the gods to get their powers, and of course this isn't super on par with what the Symphogear wielders want to do. They spend most of their time fighting them, and it's a pretty good season for fight scenes. I'd say it has some of the hypest fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Very well animated. There's a lot of fun movements that they do. Even some of just the noise fight scenes are actually really good. In episode 6, there's this one noise fight where they fight against this like Hydra, and Chris Hibiki and Tsubasa get some really good animations for it, and it's not like a super important fight. And so and it's a kind of like it's not like the auto scorers where there was a lot of losses and then just a bunch of wins. There's a lot of ups and downs when they fight them. And I think that it's a really good it's a lot less it doesn't drag as much as GX.
Yeah. Hey, this is kind of irrelevant, but I want to slip this in really quickly. We've talked before about how Good Smile was a producer on Symphogear, and then our kind of like whack theories on how that might affect things like sexualization of the characters or certain plot elements or whatever. I've only noticed that GX and AXZ don't have Good Smile listed as a producer on their My Anime List page.
Yeah, I just noticed that. Huh. Now that doesn't check out for
still
GX.
Like
that doesn't check out for GX. Well, I mean, yeah, it does.
GX still have...
They're not producers, but GX is hella sexualized.
True. Yes. So clearly, it's not like a 1-to-1 thing. But I just find it interesting that the number of producers seems to go down. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on GX, which is still a lot. 1, 2, yeah. Then like the same 5 on AXZ. So, I don't know. Maybe they got a couple less cooks in the kitchen, and then that allowed them to sort of tighten things up a bit.
Yeah, I thought AXZ was very tight. And apparently people call it Symphogear AXZ.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. They really do trust us to just figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
Never a shadow of a doubt that it's like, no, the viewers will understand. They're smart people. They'll get it. We're sorry.
We are idiots.
Yeah. Welcome to familiar territory.
We're canonically idiots. So in between times, and we'll talk about this when we talk about their character arcs, the characters have some little bonding moments, some pretty good character development. The theming for this show's really weird. I think half of it's really good, and then half of it's terrible.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that when we talk about themes.
Yeah.
So Adam is trying to get enough lives to sacrifice the world to create the Philosopher's Stone so that they can get the power of the gods. And so using Hibiki's old Gunganir rocks that fell out of her body, the Symphogear sound makes the Fool Stone, which counteracts the Philosopher's Stone. And Cagliostro and Prelati are the last two lives needed to cause the apocalypse, except they didn't die. They died supposedly in some fights that we'll talk about later. And so it didn't really fully go on, and so Adam and Tiki manifest as a god. Hibiki beats him back, and then Hibiki becomes a god because she is free of original sin, which is a real thing that is said during this show, which is just a whack shit. And so Hibiki becomes a god, and she's about to destroy the world, and then Miku screams her name, and it causes her to not be evil and possessed by God. And then Adam is Satan, I think,
or some incarnation of that.
Yeah, he's like
visually called out to that.
He's like a devil, and he's trying to harness the power of the gods to kill the gods. And you know, Prelati, Cagliostra, and Saint Germain have their redemption arc, although it feels so much more earned with them.
Mm-hmm.
It feels really earned,
especially because it doesn't feel like they're trying to make you feel sorry for them. It just feels like they're making a better decision.
Yes.
They're turning things around, but not in such a way where it's like, oh no, they were good people all along. It's just they're heel turning. That's it.
Which made me feel worse about it. I actually felt fairly emotional at their death scene.
Yeah, I miss them.
And like they even make you feel sorry for Tiki, who is just smitten by Adam, just wants to, like, in like a very innocent way though.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, I want to hold you and hug you and love you, and Adam kills her. It's kind of upsetting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, despite being, I would say, one of the most annoying characters in the series so far.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't like seeing Tiki get crushed at the end there.
I think I said, just fucking kill her already, like 8 times.
Yeah. And now look at us.
Now we miss her.
Mm-hmm.
And so the plot's wild. And this isn't, and then you find out that the reason that Hibiki is free of original sin, which is still just an absolute nuts sentence, is because of the Miku gear that was in Symphogear G. When it blasted Hibiki and Miku, it cleansed them of all sin. Mm-hmm. And so they have the ability to become gods.
Yeah. So basically it was trying to get the evil out of them, which is also a funny concept. But by that extent, they're like, well, does that mean original sin? Sure. Go for it.
Sure. And it, you know, and you get some other things, like you see the astronauts that they saved back in Symphogear GX, sold Sound some American secrets to protect them from America, who decided to nuke Japan because of Hibiki being a god. You get some Kazanari family drama, where the grandpa Kazanari wants to like bring about the Kazanari family to stop this, and Genburo and Tsubasa's dad don't want that to happen. And then you get some, you know, gals being pals moments, and
less downtime and slice of life stuff than previous seasons, unfortunately, but they still squeezed some in there.
And to be fair, the one time that it did, like, it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
But what's wild is I looked at I went back and looked at our my predictions using my bingo sheet,
mm-hmm.
and
yes.
I know some of them were pretty shitty, like rap battle. Rap battle wasn't going to happen.
Could you actually list them off so that way, because like if we just link the tweet, maybe the tweet disappears at some point. So
okay.
Go ahead and just because I want to hear them again too. List them all off.
So on the B side, we have an exam side story, which didn't happen. There was a little story about summer homework that got dropped in like episode 5. There's a new Symphogear user, and none of the villains use Symphogear. They use the Faust robes, which is basically Symphogears, but it doesn't count. Dead soldiers, period. That happened a lot. I wanted an actual romantic kiss, and there was one part where Hibiki and Miku were on a balcony.
It was so close.
It was so fucking close.
There's the bunk bed when she's getting up to leave.
They are hard teasing it. If it doesn't happen in the last season, I will scream. There's critique of the military-industrial complex, which I put in as a joke, and that one got marked off. They critique the military-industrial complex like right off the bat. I don't know if this was mentioned in this season, if we talked about it, but the Iraq War was caused by the United States looking for Symphogears. Like that's what happened. The weapons of mass destruction that they were looking for, that they lied about, was just a way to intervene in the Middle East to find Symphogears, which is incredible. I gave Genjuro dad speech, which did happen. Got that marked off. Group hug didn't happen. There was never a group hug.
Nope. I want to swing for this.
Okay.
The final episode when they wrap up Hibiki in like a hard light shield.
Yeah, you're right. That's a
group hug.
That is a group hug. All right, that counts.
Cool.
Tsubasa feels like she's just a weapon. Which sort of happens, but she doesn't feel like she's just a weapon. She accuses someone of considering her only a weapon.
Yeah.
Which I guess you can mark off. Carol gets a song, and that's supposed to be Elf9, and she didn't get a song. Whoops. Inappropriate Hot Springs episode didn't happen. In fact,
nope.
There was very little fan service in this season, comparatively. The transformation scenes were significantly better. They even did like a shower scene that wasn't awkward, and like the worst fan service you got was it doing a pan up on Hibiki wearing a towel, but it was to show her scar on her chest, so it wasn't even like that bad.
I think there's an earlier shower scene. Was it in this season or in GX?
I think it was in GX.
Maybe, yeah. But anyways, yeah, it's a major step up compared to the previous season, which says something. It's not everything, but it says something.
It is something. For N, we have Tony Glazer, which isn't a thing. He didn't show up. RIP. We have global political intrigue. Once again, put in as a joke. Happened. like, really quickly. Gals being pals was our free space. Almost immediately X'd out. I had Spirit Bomb like final attack. Kind of. But
Adam launches a Spirit Bomb in the form of a nuke.
That's fair, but it's not the final attack.
That's true.
Chris character development happened. It finally happened. We finally got Chris to talk about her past, and it was fairly good. I had a rap battle, which was a joke. Didn't happen. Super disappointed. Tragic backstory for villain was also in the G section, which did happen. All the villains are tragic. We had sword euphemisms. I don't think those happened. There was a lot of Maria flirting and calling girls pretty, but she never referred to swords. She seemed to realize that was awkward as hell and stopped.
Tsubasa has bypassed her sword phase, her metaphor phase.
Wildly tone-deaf side song by the side characters was also in G. They were not in this season like at all. They made maybe 2 appearances. Concert interrupted by noise attack. I thought that one was a shoo-in. Nope, didn't happen. We do have, for O, we have motivational Hibiki speech, which did happen. And she gave it to herself, which is pretty neat. The team falls apart due to minor differences, only to be reunited in their time of need. I don't really think that happened. There was some times where they like had some conflicts with each other, but it wasn't like they didn't like fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Kirika and Shirabe talk about how much they love each other. Check that fucking off.
Oh yeah.
A whole new kind of noise. Nope, still alkanoise. I shrugged. This isn't a visual podcast, but I did shrug. And then I had character death, and that's very vague. I kind of meant main character death, and there was almost a time where Kirika got pretty damn close, but she didn't. So no bingo for this one, and I didn't make one for XV because there's no way in hell I'd be able to get it.
Yeah,
I have no idea what's for the next season. I thought I solved this show.
Right? Yeah. Just totally unexpected.
Yeah.
Almost like a total flip of everything we would have thought was going to happen.
Right? And it does it in a way that doesn't feel like it's trying to... It's not like Last Jedi levels of, oh, you expected this, but instead it's this, right?
Yeah.
It was just mostly good storytelling.
Yeah.
And we weren't expecting good storytelling from Symphogear. So yeah, that's basically our plot of the show. Let's talk about characters. I think this is a very Hibiki season. Like, it's always about Hibiki. She's always the best. But this is the one where she gets a little bit more depth. Like, she had some depth in GX with her dad. But this one has a little bit more of...
nuance?
Maybe? I don't want to use the word nuance to describe Symphogear. But
she's having to figure out, like, these things she's been dwelling on for a long time now kind of have to just sit in a gray area. So, like, you know, it can't just be about, like, I want to help everyone, I want to open my hand to everyone. I think she's finally getting over that a little bit and putting her foot down, saying, like, okay, I'm not going to feel bad about this person, you know? But there's still a you know, decent portion of that where she's still getting upset for realizing, you know, I'm still just a weapon, that kind of thing.
Yeah. She kind of has that moment a lot more, but it kind of fits more with her than Tsubasa. Like, you know, it fits for Tsubasa because it was a long time before she realized that she's more than a weapon. But Hibiki's like the opposite, where by the end of the show, it's revealed that Gunganir was the spear they used to stab Jesus Christ to prove that he was dead. And that makes her a god killer. God.
Saying it out loud really just kind of changes the thought, doesn't it?
It does. It's so fucking weird. But like, there's a part, one of the alchemists' like powers they have is these quantum monsters. They have two. There's the god in the end and the big snake. And essentially it's, if you take damage, instead you find a world in which you didn't take damage and you become that version of yourself. It's like the concept of quantum immortality, right? Where you're alive somewhere in the multiverse, and it pulls the one in which you're alive. And they're like, how do we defeat this? And they do it by having Hibiki punch it so hard it kills it in every single universe. It's wild. Yeah. It's so goofy.
It's like taking the first match of like a best of 3 set that someone just straight up walks, you know. You get hit so hard you're like, fuck this is not happening. Step up.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And so it kind of goes from seeing Hibiki as this carefree optimistic girl who wants to see the world be a better place to start realizing that she might be the most powerful creature to ever exist. And it makes her feel bad. The part where she is like slamming like on the ground saying is all I can do punch things was actually fairly emotional, and the voice acting for that scene was really good. The voice acting for this entire season is incredible. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. We're also pretty much done with like relationship drama at this point. Like there's still like the pulling and tugging on it, so like, you know, Hibiki feels bad for leaving Miku in the night, when her birthday's coming up, and she's got to go save the world. But there isn't this yo-yoing of like, does she really love me, or like, like I feel like I'm all alone, or that kind of thing. There's pulling and tugging, but there is not this absolute like, throw of drama that we would get in G and GX.
Yeah, well, it's like when the only tension you have between Miku and Hibiki is when Hibiki's leaving, and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come back because tomorrow's my birthday, and I mean, in 2 days is my birthday, and I can't miss my birthday."
Mm-hmm.
And the only tension you feel is kiss, fucking just do it.
Just do it.
They don't.
And Miku's basically just a secondary part of HQ.
Yeah.
Now
she just walks.
She might as well get a badge.
There's a part where she just walks in. Like she's hung out in HQ before, but we've never seen her just walk in.
Yeah. She's just appearing constantly. Yeah. Like they might as well give her like a punch card. Just like clock in, Yeah.
She's great in this one. I really like Miku in this. And I'm kind of excited because it kind of teases she's going to be a little bit bigger part in the final season.
I like the idea that Miku would be filling out one of those like career forms they have in Japanese schools, where it's like, you have to describe like what you're going to do after high school, so that way like you can get help from counselors or whatever in case you're stuck, or they're essentially trying to see if you have a plan in action. I'd love to see that Miku's is just like to join a government organization and hang out with her girlfriend.
Very, very specific set of skills that she has. And so Hibiki's story is pretty good. I really liked Hibiki in this season. She had a lot of fun stuff. Tsubasa was I liked Tsubasa in this season.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much where she can go.
Yeah.
I feel like she's conquered her problems, and now just she loosened up a little bit in this season, and there was actually a very good use of the flashback of Kanade's death.
Mm-hmm.
In which I was like, I felt like emotional about Kanade, who I've constantly made fun of forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually pretty interesting. I do want to mention we got a comment on our Symphogear episode. Essentially, the idea was since Kanade is the crux of like the first season's themes, but she's really not like a we don't really get to see her do anything except die.
Mm-hmm.
And so in essence, she is in herself a historical legend, and she can't live up to her own legend. And that was by Xing Shang Shamalama, which is the person that commented on our video. And it kind of checks out with the rest of the theme, where you have all that fun stuff regarding like historical relevance and how important it is to these things. And I dig that. And they use it for a little bit. There's another part. Tsubasa kind of has this weird story arc with Shirabe for a little bit, but that's more about Shirabe than it is about Tsubasa. And we'll talk about Shirabe's story in a bit. Is there anything you want to say about Tsubasa before I just continue to blow wind out of my mouth?
She kept her motorcycles intact this time.
She did. She didn't blow up a single motorcycle. Good on her.
That's growth.
That is growth.
In general, I'm gonna say this, that the basically blanket statements. Well, Tsubasa and Maria, I feel like, have maybe some of the least like character movement. But it's nice to have them as just steady, figures in the cast. I don't think they really need more development at this point. Rather, I like to have them as like a foundation for the other characters who are still working things out. Makes sense because they're also the oldest in like the main cast.
They did a good job at. I feel like that we finally get to see some characters have their end goal for their characterizations, and I feel like Maria and Tsubasa have that a lot. Which brings us to a person that probably has gotten the least amount of character growth until this season. Chris, what did you think of Chris this season?
Finally. That's what I thought. After all of our heartaching, finally Chris gets an opportunity to unpack. And I'm glad it's not through this sort of, general brooding over, like, war crimes and stuff. Because she has gotten that in the past, it kind of felt ineffectual. But here, they develop it through a single vignette, where, Chris essentially has an established backstory with, two newly introduced characters. That would be Sonia and
Stefan,
yeah.
Or Steven.
Or Stefan.
Yeah,
Steven.
There's a lot of ways to pronounce that name.
Yeah, essentially, her way of finding resolve is through this more singularized interaction, where she had been saved by Sonia from a major attack in the past.
The attack that killed her parents.
Yes, and so when her parents died, she blamed it on Sonia, being a child and sort of, looking for a way to externalize. And so after all this time, when they reunite, now Chris kind of, the scales have turned, where the Illuminati Nazi dude is attacking, and Chris needs to make a tough decision and shoot off Stefan's leg in order to stop it from totally zapping him because a noise got him. And so essentially there's that tension between them that they've both failed each other, and they've both suffered loss as a result. But then he's able to step in between the two and say, hey, we're able to still help each other because we're all still alive here. And we're all still essentially holding hands and working uphill together, despite our traumas, despite our disabilities. It works.
Yeah. I actually really like Sonia's character. She's not in it like a ton. But it's nice to have someone who is doing like helpful actions that isn't a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty shallow, not like in a negative way, but like in the it's not shallow in the sense that you're like, well, that seems forced, but it's like, what else does Chris need? And that's what she needed. And it does it good. So let's talk about the duo, Kirika and Shirabe.
Yeah.
I don't really think we need to talk about Maria, since I basically would say the same thing about her. There is I will say there is a nice part where during probably the best fight in the entire season, where they isolate Kirika and Shirabe away from everyone because that's who the Bavarian Illuminati is scared of the most, is their like interaction with each other. But Kazunari trained everyone to be able to partner with other people, and so you get to see Chris and Maria have this really cool fight, and it's really neat because both of them are like, hey, we used to be villains and we've solved that, and then they make a car out of their Symphogears, and it's pretty sick.
Yeah. I have to say, Change the Future being the name of their team-up vehicle has to be one of the most fucking boss things they've ever done in the show.
It's so good.
I love it. It's so on the nose and like blunt. And that's what Symphogear is best at.
Yep.
So
and another one of my favorite parts about that is you were talking about how you wish, because Stefan does the really long platitudes about how Sonia and Chris just need to get over the past. And they're like, I wish this show was more blunt. And then Chris saves Maria from an attack. And Maria just goes, you're late, but you look good, so I can forgive you. And we're like, yeah, that's the Symphogear we want. Also, real quick, Chris does catch a bullet with her mouth and spits it out. That's sick.
Right between the teeth.
It's pretty good. So let's talk about Kirika and Shirabe.
Yeah.
So this might be the first time where you can separate the characters. Oh, there is something we need to talk about Maria. We'll talk about her afterwards.
Yeah, we'll double back.
So the whole shtick with the whole bonding thing is you find out that Kirika's very good at bonding with anybody. And she doesn't have a problem doing unison attacks with everybody on the team. However, Shirabe has this kind of dependency on Kirika. And the background information they get is Shirabe doesn't know her actual name when she was brought in to see if she was a vessel for Finne. And Kirika doesn't know her birthday. And that's how they kind of paired up with each other. And there's a really good part where Shirabe is fighting Ogawa, which is just great. But I kind of want to talk about like all the fan service they do with some of that stuff later. But Shirabe's song is all about Kirika. But Kirika's song in this season is about not Shirabe. And because of that, it's kind of neat because while she's singing the song about how she needs Kirika, she's just fucking up. And that's kind of where Tsubasa's character arc comes in, where she talks about how like, hey, I had someone who I thought I was incredibly close to too, and I was, but that doesn't mean you can't work with other people. And that's sort of the catalyst for the good themes that this show has. And Kirika doesn't really have too much of growth. She's just kind of happy-go-lucky, and she's just trying to make Shirabe feel good. Although she does almost do a big old death by doing a climax song while just absolutely on a ton of linker. So Shirabe and Kirika still need linker, while Maria learned how to not need linker. And Kirika almost dies, and she talks about how the reason she wanted to have Hibiki's birthday is because she's like, I don't know my birthday, and I think it's good that, you know, people know their birthdays, and it's kind of but it's a pretty emotional part, and she bleeds, she cries blood, which is a good callback to the original time they used the climax song. That's probably the most damage a climax song has done to anybody since season 1.
Which makes sense because she did stop a nuke.
She did stop a nuke. And so the thing that I wanted to talk about Maria. So Maria has a weird arc in which they redeem Mom. Or they try to. Yeah. They try to.
Yeah.
So
we have a hyperbolic time chamber, like, memory jump episode where they're, like, foraging through Maria's mind and her reconstructions of her memory.
So that they could reproduce Linker. It's weird.
Yeah.
And in doing so, it's like, oh, Mom wanted to push you hard so that you didn't fail. And then there's this tomato lady that's like, hey, if you put tomatoes through a lot of stress, they become really sweet. And I get where they're coming from, but it's kind of like overwork culture is okay as long as you come out on top. We'll talk about that more in themes, but that's kind of Maria's whole character this season, and it's not good.
Yeah, I think they managed to sort of undo that by the end, or at least forget about it, but in the meantime, it really is kind of, like, you're, like, wincing at it, like, ew, yikes, yeah, and, like, when they're revisiting her memories, it's not entirely, like, you know, redeeming of Mama, because, you know, it's, clearly she's still putting them through shit, but it's saying things like, oh, you know, she's making, like, the lesser of two evils in her decisions, and she looks like she feels sympathy in the process, but if you're just kind of lazing through it, or you're not viewing it too critically, then yeah, it really honestly feels like they're doing the, you know, whole redeem Mama thing, which, you know, I'm not falling for, and I resent it, but I could see someone else sort of, you know, I could see them actually wanting that to be a thing. Anime is pretty bad about that. This Symphogear actually has like a Naruto-esque structure in how its villains work, where you meet some evil people who are seemingly irredeemable, and then it turns out there was someone bigger and badder than them pulling the strings, and so that concurrent villain kind of gets redeemed because they realize how they were being used and, you know, who they are in the military complex of their fictional world. And then the next person up also gets that recursively up and up through the chain until they are fighting God. And that's not a joke.
I mean, they basically, and that's the thing. That's what season 5 is about, and they basically just state that at the end of season 4. They're like, hey, you killed Satan, which means now God is coming to kill you. Yeah.
So it, you know, we've found this in quite a few of the shows we've watched, where it's like, you know, abusive parents that get redeemed because they're still your parents, and, you know, you still need to work with them. You know, aka Arjuna, and even Symphogear has this bad dad kind of turnaround thing in season 3. Bad dads are a lot of it. But in general, it's this absolution sort of approach where occasionally it tips from like people should have the opportunity to redeem themselves into you should be the first one to take steps to redeeming them on their behalf.
Yeah.
And that's where it feels kind of toxic and nasty.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think Symphogear is trying to portray something toxic as healthy. I just think it doesn't have the tact to give a shit.
Yeah.
It's too busy making alternate history relics fight God that it kind of misses the mark on some of its themes. I don't think it comes from a place of like malicious intent like Arjuna does. Actually, I don't think Arjuna was malicious too. I think that was incompetence.
Yeah.
This show was just, we don't care. This is where Symphogear doesn't care.
Yeah. It feels like Symphogear in its writing is also taking the lesser of two evils, where it's like, well, we need to give a reason for why we are pushing your characters in this way, and they need to internalize it somehow, so let's have them accept it rather than resent it, so that way we can keep moving forward with the, you know, with the TV show structure we're given. Which is lame, but at the very least, you know, Grant and I can step outside of that.
Yeah. So real quick before we get into the villains, I kind of want to mention that this show really gave sound a little bit more of a fun feeling. Kazunari got to be a little bit more involved with the characters.
Sorry, do you mean song?
That's what I said. What did I say?
I thought you said sound.
I might have said sound. I mean song. Holy shit, I've been saying that wrong. Yes, song.
It doesn't matter.
Kazunari.
It's better than like what Mobile Defense Division 2 or whatever they used to call it.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. So Kazunari gets a little bit more personality. Like he always had great personality. But one of the things we notice is he calls everybody Kun. Like, he calls, like, Hibiki Kun or Elf9 Kun. Like, he doesn't call him Chan, but he still, like, refers to them as, like, younger, like, person. And it's great because we were talking about it and we were wondering if it was, like, a sign of respect or what. And it really is just because everyone is so diminutive to Kazunari and he wants to protect them.
Yeah, it is. It is diminutive, but not derogatory. It's affectionate.
Yes. He gets to fight the Symphogear users and just absolutely beats the shit out of them. It's pretty fun. He catches a bunch of grenades and throws them back. I love that shit. Yeah. Elf9 is actually a pretty fun character in this. She's kind of taken over the role of what Ryoko had in season 1. where she's a scientist studying the relics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like her character arc in this. She feels bad for being the one to survive besides Carol, and she's like, I'm trying to use her memories the best I can to track down this world and save it.
Mm-hmm.
She's fun. She's not like offensive or like annoying.
Mm-hmm.
She's just kind of there. But
yeah, there is a hint then of like, like when looking at research, like if some of this was gathered from inhumane purposes before, do we still use it, for good now? And that ethical conundrum. They don't exactly give an answer on that. It's not a major part of the messaging, but it's at least a glint in her character that, makes things a little bit more interesting.
And I'm sure we might. I honestly believe that the show will go into it in season 5 now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to be like, yep, that's done, it's over. But now I'm way on board for extended Symphogear lore in season 5.
Mm-hmm.
Ogawa gets some fun stuff. He gets to be a little bit more of a ninja, and it's confirmed that he's the one that taught Tsubasa some ninja tricks, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
He does get hit with one of Shirabe's saw blades and does a replacement jutsu.
A substitution, yeah, kawarimi.
It's fun. It's stupid, but it's fun. So Song, and even the two, I don't even know their names, but the two like desk jockeys they have,
mm-hmm.
they even have like a moment where they're trying to get the Antikythera before the Bavarian Illuminati, and they have a little bit of a back and forth, and it's charming.
Yeah. I don't remember the names of the characters. In Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, it's Maria Ross and someone else, right? They remind me of them, where it's like they're minor characters made slightly more interesting because of how they intersect with the major characters.
Yeah.
And they finally get something.
It's
nice.
Sakuya Fujitaka, which is the guy, and Aoi Tomosato, which is the girl.
Yeah.
And they're fun. They're fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This season, I think, in how it's different to me, is that when they need to have someone's like major character developments, it's usually not isolated to themselves, sort of like spinning in circles or just fighting enemies. Instead, they work with another minor character. For example, Ogawa steps in, or Kazunari steps in, or Elf9 or someone at HQ will chime in and say something. It feels more like they're mixing and matching the cast that they have, rather than letting everyone kind of have to isolate with their own arcs,
mm-hmm.
or doing like a Sentai type thing where it's like, oh, we found a new enemy, we lost to the enemy, what did we learn? New thing, okay, now we win. It doesn't feel so closed off.
Mm-hmm.
In general, too, it feels like they've kind of done away with all of the pull string problems that the characters have had in the past. Things like Tsubasa's I am just a sword thing that you brought up before. All the stuff like that feels like it's finally like done out. We're finished mm-hmm. with that. And that's a relief. It doesn't feel like you're in this like repetitious spiral anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, Song's good. Let's talk about the villains, because they stole the fucking show for
mm-hmm.
this season.
Yeah, so here's my question to you. What the hell did they do to make the Bavarian Illuminati troop better than the autoscorers?
So the autoscorers agency existed where Carol's agency was, right? The autoscorers mm-hmm. existed to get killed by the Symphogear, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So all the fights were, and I think that comes down to how the fights in this season weren't, you win or you lose all the time, then you suddenly win. The first time they run into the Bavarian Illuminati, they beat them. They destroyed mm-hmm. them. And the Bavarian Illuminati is like, how are we going to deal with this? And then Adam comes in, blows a nuke, and he's like, you guys have Faust robes now, and these combat Symphogears. So you have a time and place where they're fighting they can't fight them because of the Faust robes, but they still manage to do some pretty decent fights against them. And so the combat between the two groups is no longer one-sided one way or another. It seems like it's a battle of wits, and it's kind of like an arms race. You add to the fact that the Bavarian Illuminati actually has a fairly legitimate reason to do what they do. Like they kill people. And one of the things that is pretty interesting is Saint Germain is counting how many people she is responsible for their death. And that has to mostly do with her trying to create the Sorcerer's Stone or the Philosopher's Stone. Fucking Harry Potter, goddamn. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to do this. It weighs on me. I hate it. But to bring everlasting peace, this is what needs to happen. And she's not wrong. She's doing the wrong thing, but her reasons are just. Not just, they don't justify what she does, but they are just in itself. Remove the curse of Belial so that humans can finally achieve peace. You add some charming character designs. Like Cagliostra has big tits, but she's also coded as an adult, right? And they animate her in fun poses. She kind of has this Precure thing going on where she has like heart-based attacks.
When she's in her Faust robes, her little like hair buns look straight up like Sailor Moon.
Yeah. And Peretti has a frog plush, and that's so good.
Yeah. I love those plushies.
She and they have their own reasons to do something. Because like Peretti really wants to see like the brightest light, and it seems kind of like not a good reason to do what she does, but it's mostly to show how good she is as an alchemist. And Cagliostra has the same thing, except Cagliostra just fucking hates Adam. And I think this little inner character drama, like the Saint Germain, Prelati, and Cagliostra hate Adam. They don't like him, but they feel that they need to use him. And I think that this drama within this group is really good, and it gives them a little bit more depth.
It's not like Mama and Maria and Cutica and Shirabe, where essentially, Mama is sort of subjugating them to her authority, and they're following along because they feel some sort of twisted, codependency or whatever. Instead, this is like two Venn diagrams of villains who are trying to take advantage of the other party. And it works, I think.
Yeah, I do too. Saint Germain has some fun stuff just as a character. I'll talk a little bit more about it in themes, but the way that she redeems herself, quote unquote, is Saint Germain has always been kind of on a I don't want to say suicide mission, but she never expected to. She was always ready to die for the cause, and that's pretty neat. And she has a gun that shoots a dragon spirit, and that's cool as shit. And add into the fact that Cagliostra and Peretti are actually some positive trans representation. And it's kind of fun to have trans villains, especially when they don't make being trans a negative thing.
Yeah. I can go into this. So, I feel like for them, what makes them work for us is that this is not a trans narrative. It is trans representation. These are trans characters, but this is not their story about transitioning. They're post-transition, and they're just girl bossing.
Yeah.
I know that phrase is already, getting tired, but...
I mean...
Yeah, anyways. So, there's a lot that, I've sort of been, like, unraveling, from almost, like, the very start with these characters. As someone personally who has been spending my summer, working on my trans femme presentation, because I'm a gender fluid person, I hope people believe me when I say that when Cagliostro first appears in the show and starts talking, I I originally hesitated to say it, but I was very excited to just say, "Oh, this character's a trans icon."
Well,
I was worried because I was like, "Oh no, what if they what if that's not it, and B, what if they terribly fuck this up?" But like I just sensed something, particularly because of the voice delivery off the bat. By the way, voice actor is Shota Aoi, who is a male voice actor with a feminine like voice tenor. And someone who's sort of come into that character acting role over the years, and realized people really enjoy it. It works really well.
And Shato Aoi does a lot of like male like feminine looks. I actually just sent you a picture on Discord.
Grant sent me an image. Is this Shota then too?
Yeah, that's Shota. That was him at the Symphogear Live event in 2018.
Cool. Yeah. So I personally don't know Shota's gender identity, but would seemingly be leaning towards non-conforming in some extent.
Yeah, and
that's
like
rad.
Even if he is I am a male and he is cis male all the way through, he at least embraces his feminine side enough that he's comfortable with it. He actually played another blue-haired I don't want to say trans icon, but kind of like a feminine male icon. He's Fisheye in Sailor Moon. And that's pretty neat because I have a animation still of Fisheye.
Yeah. So I do want to continue to sort of unravel this because randomly dropping that Illuminati villain of show Symphogear is a trans icon is kind of there's a lot of shit to unroll there, so I'm gonna do that. First of all, I do say that somewhat ironically at the very least. Like, there, I'm being tongue in cheek when I say that.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend someone to like, oh, write your characters like this character, and However, I do think that this really does work in some senses. Part of this is because Symphogear has a limited number of brain cells, and those limited number of brain cells came to the conclusion that, hey, this character's a woman, and there's no other questions. That's just it. They were granted the bodies of women, so they're women. And they somehow vaulted over the entire conundrum that transphobes have been wrestling with themselves over for decades now. So congrats to them on that. I also think that Symphogear being so honest of a show kind of helps out. There's rarely any kind of like deception or like subterfuge going on in Symphogear. You mentioned before, like, nuance is not a good term for Symphogear, and that's absolutely correct. Because like there's rarely any time where someone like, I think the one I can think of explicitly is when Chris pretends that she's turning sides in Symphogear G for a little while. And that's like maybe for like an episode.
Yeah.
And you don't really believe it.
Yeah.
But outside of that, nobody is clever in Symphogear. They know what they need to do and they have the power to do it, so it's just brute force. And so, in that like focus and that earnesty, Cagliostro is just delivered as a bonkers enemy, and that's it. Her transness is not intersecting her role as a villain. I know that's not how things work in the real world. Everything intersects. But because Symphogear is written like that, these things really are kind of set apart. you know, she is a trans woman and also a villain, and those two parts of her don't talk to each other. I mean, this whole thing about them being trans characters doesn't even get mentioned until like episode 8 or 9.
It gets mentioned
I think.
earlier.
9?
We're just stupid and missed it.
Oh, that could be it too.
But it's not like
yeah,
explicitly mentioned. Perlotti just says, "You've taken the body of a woman to be more perfect." When she toasts to her dead friend, and it's actually kind of sad because she pours Cagliostro a glass of wine, and she pours herself a glass of milk, and she like aggressively toasts.
Yeah, that was that one hit for me a little bit.
Well, and one of the things about Cagliostro is she's the first one to realize that Adam was using them. And what's interesting is that I know you said there's not a lot of deception in it, but there is one thing of deception, and Cagliostro fakes her and Perlotti's death so that Adam doesn't get what he wants, and it's really well done.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and what you're describing here, they're competent characters. You know, like Cagliostro is goofy. Like, she's straight up, like, acting most of the time, where, like, she's being over dramatic and saying, like, these really dumb, tropey anime, like, cutesy girl things. But that fun-lovingness doesn't feel like she's, you know, not smart or not competent or anything like that. It doesn't feel like... It feels like a taunt. You know, so she gets to stay competent throughout the series. They also don't treat her and Perlotti with kid gloves. They get to be villains, they get to have their motives, and they get to be beaten for having those motives. And, you know, all of that happens, you know, without sort of, like, dumbing it down or, you know, again, there's no intersection here to sort of confuse things. It's just about who they are as characters, and their nature as trans women is pre all of this, you know. I think it helps too that, like, this one is... This point's going to be different for me than for other people, because as far as I can understand myself at this point in life, I'm asexual, but I don't get the sense that her costume is sexualized, on the principle that it's so overly sexualized that it becomes blindingly unsexy.
Yeah, which is what a lot of people say, like Kill la Kill does, and I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
I think Kill la Kill tries to be sexy. I don't think Cagliostro does.
There's no one who, like,
ogles
you know,
her.
there's a couple times where people are like, God, you're overdoing it, or like, you know, I think they'll poke fun at her appearance in some way, but like, it never feels like it's meant for, like, the audience's ogling purposes. Besides, like, Symphogear's baseline problematic stuff of like, you know, chest bouncing and, you know, focusing camera shots on their bodies and stuff like that. So she meets the bottom line there. It's so pastel and, you know, cutesy magical girl princess nonsense that it hits an overflow where it, like, maxes out at 255 and then, you know, resets to 0.
I will
also, punch girls are hype.
Yeah.
So
I was actually going to mention Cagliostro has probably the best fight scene in the entire series so far. When she fights Chris and Maria, it's just hype as shit because she's doing all this laser stuff. Maria goes in to, like, fight her. She's like, you can't use close range weapons. Far range weapons, close range. And she goes, well, this girl punches also. And then she just punches the shit out of Maria. And then it's hype as shit. That's also where Change the Future comes in. And it is just one of the best moments in the series.
It's a highlight for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And once again, their characters have a good cause, even if they're doing evil shit.
Yeah. It's extremely lofty and, like, very risky that they would reach so far. But yeah, like you said. By the way, as penance, because perhaps what I'm saying is absolute blasphemy. If you do want trans narratives in anime, I can at least make uh, two suggestions. So one of them is Horo Musuko, which is Wandering Sun. It's all about, like young teenagers figuring out their gender identities, and the primary character, the protagonist of the show, is a trans girl. Watch the anime. I understand there's a part in the manga that I just really don't I don't agree with at all. But I didn't get any weirdness out of the anime when I watched it some years ago. So hey, check that out if this is stuff you're interested in. For actual, like, solid stuff on this topic. Also, Hoshiai no Sora, which I think is Stars Align, maybe. It's a tennis show, but they do have a scene somewhere in there where there's a gender non-conforming character talking with another character about gender identity, and how they're working things out and they don't entirely understand it, but there's no judgment between them. And then the cis character in the room mentions how like they actually use like the term FTM, female to male. So yeah, if you want a dollop of that, like, admittedly, Western drawn transgender identity stuff, then you'll find it there. So it's at least sprinkled in. I don't know about the rest of the show. I haven't watched it yet. I'm gonna eventually. So there. That's that for me.
Yep. All right. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about the villains. They're good.
Yep.
Let's talk about the themes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Normally, I kind of just sort of like try to barrel through the themes, but this time I want to keep it open ended because I feel like Grant, being like the Symphogear, like more so like the Symphogear mainstay of the two of us, and also just as interested in this stuff as I am. If you want to lead or like chime in on themes, absolutely go for it.
Yeah.
We've already sort of talked over this stuff originally. Do you have any like initial thoughts that you want to?
So we talked a little bit about it with Maria, but I think one of the themes that it weirdly kept trying to like push is that hard work pays off, even if it hurts you. And we talked about how it kind of doubles back at the end, and I don't feel like it does. It never says like hard work pays off even if it hurts you, but self-care is important, right? Like I understand the purpose, because yes, there are times where a person in life will have to go through hardships, and if you are able to self-reflect on it, there is a good chance that you can become a better person. And I can see how some people would get that out of this season. But I didn't. I kind of felt like it's like, oh, people will hurt you because they love you. And it kind of fits in with the whole bad dad arc from season 3.
Mm-hmm. And kind of the Illuminati too, in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And kind of to bring it to audio as a metaphor here, we're considering like the sound mastering of how themes are sharing the space here. It almost feels like, to me, the whole like, harsh conditions are good for you, like pain builds character and suffering builds character, that kind of thing. It's pretty loud, like really loud in the middle of the show, but then just by the friendship cooperation stuff kicking back in stronger near the end, in comparison, the friendship stuff gets louder over top of the I forgot the idiom. How did I forget the idiom about learning from pain?
What doesn't kill you?
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah. Oh, my brain is melting. Apparently Symphogear didn't finish the hot wiring job on my brain. Everything's falling apart. Anyways, So when I had originally finished the show, I was kind of skeptical of like whether they still kind of believed in that. I feel like it's true. But it just so happens that they're still so heavy on the friendship juice that just kind of seems faded out in comparison.
Yeah.
Still, I don't care for it.
Yeah, I kind of wish.
Don't like it.
I kind of wish, like, because, like, you can talk about it and be. It's like the problem I have with it is it's not what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's purposely hurt people to make them stronger. Because that's like even like the tomato metaphor where she's like, I purposely put them in harsh conditions.
Yes. Yes.
Where if it's
great
like,
point.
Like if she was like, yeah, I like tomatoes and they don't grow well here, but because of the soil content, they're sweet. It's like, okay, so that makes sense. Where she's not.
That's more about environment. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that because of the friendship juice that this show takes shots of constantly, you do get a little bit more of, hey, cooperation makes the dream work. And it's pretty heavy-handed with the whole, like, Shirabe couldn't cooperate with anybody else than Kirika, and that made her a little bit weaker than the rest of her crew. But it also, one of the things that really ties it back is during the final fight, Hibiki does not have any backup. It is just her. And her and Saint Germain start working together. And the moves they do are really cool, and they're very in sync. And it really, really plays in with the whole working with people is going to be better. And even the Bavarian Illuminati kind of agree with it at the end. And one of my favorite things that Saint Germain says is when she's standing with Prelati and Cagliostro as they're going to stop the nuke that was launched by America. They go, so you finally took Hibiki's hand. And Saint Germain goes, no, I didn't. Because I still have my ideals. But we have similar ideals, so I understand why we need to work together. And I really liked that part. Because it wasn't... Hibiki showed me the light. It was... Hibiki showed me that there's another way, and that's okay, even if we did something different. I liked it a lot. And I felt really emotional when Saint Germain, Cagliostro, and Perletti
passed on, sparkled.
Fucking blew up a note. And then the best part about that part is Saint Germain says, this is the only time I've never felt like dying. And I love that line. Because she spent her whole life ready to die. And when she finally completes the one thing that she set out to do, which is keep the gods' powers from becoming monopolizing it, she's like, well, shit, I don't want to die, but I have to. And it's so good. It's so fucking good.
Yeah. I wonder maybe if Symphogear walks a weird tightrope with this because it doesn't focus a lot on environment influencing behavior in the sense of like your conditions and your circumstances. All the conditions and circumstances that it outlines as creating pain for the characters are actually because other characters are inflicting suffering with their ideals and their like villainous plots and things, you know. It's, you know, Hibiki's dad causing problems. It's Mama starting, you know, this, you know, whack, you know, organization and plan to, you know, with Dr. Vare and all this, you know, world domination stuff in between, and then that, you know, gets people hurt in the search for Fine, and, you know, it always comes around to someone is the cause of the environment that hurts people. And so therefore there's a culpability in that. You know, when it comes to tomato metaphor, it almost doesn't work at all in Symphogear, because the woman's saying like, well, actually, you know what? I take that back. It does work because she's like, oh, well, I put the tomatoes in a harsh environment so then they'll grow better. And who's responsible for putting them in that environment? It's the old woman. So, Symphogear is not going to discuss things like, poverty or socioeconomic conditions, really. It's, when we take a trip to the South American, plot, and we have the Valverde stuff, it's not there to talk at all about, the circumstances they're living in. It's strictly about what the Illuminati and Song are inflicting in the way while they're there.
Yep.
Which I guess, in a grander scheme, is relevant if you're someone who thinks of like the system's view, by the hands of ruling class people who create structures of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that works. Or maybe I'm just going into a tailspin at this point. I don't know.
It's pretty whack. It's a whack show that you don't know how it's gonna be.
It's still trying to figure out a little bit of the whole violence thing too.
Mm-hmm.
We've mentioned it with Hibiki. If that's the stuff you're really into, and you're just not quite feeling that Symphogear is giving you the answers you want out of that, go watch Trigun. I wouldn't say that Trigun perfects that message either, because it's, I don't think that there's a perfect way to deliver that theme of like, how do we make, quick decisions and create mutual aid in a world in which, everybody dies. But I think Trigun does it a lot better, so there's that.
Okay. Yeah. 100%.
All done with themes.
No, I do have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Does Symphogear AXZ get a 7 from Brantley?
Yeah.
It does?
Don't tell anybody.
I'm so happy, man. I mean, like, to be fair, it took GX to get a 7 for me. And I don't know if AXZ gets an 8 for me, but I'm legitimately so happy it got a 7 from you. I'm so happy you think it's good.
Keep it down, dude. I don't want people to know.
Woo! Love it. Hypothetical time, yeah?
Here we go.
So,
alrighty.
I have a hypothetical for you.
Okay, lay it on me.
A couple nights ago when we were finished, and by a couple nights ago, I mean yesterday, when we were finishing Symphogear, we were watching it with one of our good buddies who loves whack shit in anime, in which he claimed that George W. Bush used his own Symphogear to propel the United States into the Iraqi war by doing 9/11 with his Symphogear. And I said that his Symphogear is Excalibur.
Mm-hmm.
What other world leaders in the history of mankind have had Symphogears?
Oh God. Here's the thing. I don't know enough mythology to like actually pull that together. Let me think. But I can at least come up with a few bastards. Who's the what do you call him? Like the telepaster dude who like you get envelopes from him or something. What the fuck is that dude? Televangelical kind of thing.
The televangelicals.
Yeah. Whatever. There's like a really popular one.
Are you talking about the guy that's like, and I will blow COVID with the winds of God?
Yeah, that guy. That guy's got a Symphogear.
What does he use it for? Are you thinking of Kenneth Coughlin?
That's probably it.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what? Handpick any one of those crusty ass white dudes. Yeah. It's not that they'd have a Symphogear because they have ideals that they want to, enforce through Symphogear violence. It's that they would, in fact, seek to seize the power of gods.
Fair.
Yeah.
I
You're gonna have to pull through on this one. I'm
Okay.
coming up with nothing.
So Nestor Makhno, anarchist extraordinaire, created the Ukrainian anarchy group during the Russian Unification War. Definitely had a Symphogear, and he was known for recruiting the Tachaka, which is the name of his Symphogear, by the way. The Tachaka was the very first machine gun mounted on a vehicle, and it was a Gatling gun mounted on a horse-drawn carriage. And that was his Symphogear.
Beautiful.
All right.
Incredible. Fits in with the whole vehicle theme we've got going in this season.
That's right. We didn't talk about the vehicle thing. Real quick, all the Symphogear users, when they combine their Symphogears, get a vehicle. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it used to be that Cutica and Chirabe were like, that was their thing. But now everybody's getting cars. Woo!
Yeah.
Alright. Here we go. In the heat of battle, you and I sprint forward in perfect harmony and combine into a vehicle of destruction. What is it called?
Oh, fuck. That's it. That's what it's called.
Oh, fuck! The graphics come up on screen. Oh, fuck.
Oh, God, we need to...
What does it look like? Does it look like a tricycle?
It's like... It's just like a tandem bicycle with, like, jets on the back.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
You know what? That's great, because my idea was that it was going to be called Vicious Cycle.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, man. It's both, but it's both of them are good.
We just came together and made a great idea.
We did.
If we ever get fans, I hope someone makes fan art of that. Okay. Next up, and the last hypothetical I have to present. Hibiki needs to hold her girlfriend's hand and complete her homework. What can she do?
Wow, this is like the most vague one I've ever been asked.
How does she do both at the same time, Grant?
Hibiki is incapable of doing more than one thing at the same time. Although, to be fair, Hibiki was the first one to realize that Gunganir stabbed Jesus. And I think that's pretty rad. Because, like, when everyone else were like, that's the god killer, Hibiki just looks at the camera and goes, yeah, I know. And everyone got absolutely lost the intellectual war against Hibiki. So here's how she does it. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
She holds Miku's hand, and Miku does the homework. Because that's the only way she's gonna get anything done, is if Miku does it. If it's
that's
not
the correct answer.
If it's not killing a god, Miku has to do it. Also, that's some whack shit right there. Hibiki can't do summer homework, but she can kill God, and I relate to that on like a spiritual level.
Oh my God, executive dysfunction works in interesting ways.
Yeah, man. Oh man, I'd really like to do this homework, but I just gotta fucking kill God.
Just feeling it right now. Yeah. For anybody who might think, well, she can do the homework with one hand and hold Miku's hand with the other. Wrong. You're a fool.
She can't do that.
Double check your math and look in the back of the book.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode. Brantley, do you have any other final things to say about Symphogear?
Nah, because I'm just looking ahead.
Yeah, man.
I think next we're probably going to do Tropical Rouge Precure.
Oh,
finally.
Yeah. It finished. Yeah.
Well, I mean, sort of. It's still ongoing. They didn't stop that train.
No, that's going to continue. They got more toys to sell.
Yeah, so we'll probably go up to episode 12.
Yeah.
And then go on from there.
But yeah, thank you for listening to this episode of Familiar Territory. If you liked what you heard, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe our channel. We have a Twitter account. It's at Familiar Territ, which is a terrible name. We should have made it better. It's Familiar, normally spelled. Territ, Territ, the number 2.
There's links in the description.
There are going to be links in the description. We also do a Twitch stream. We have uploaded some VODs, although I did fuck up my mic, and the attack and Noise Gate were really bad. So you can try and watch our playthrough of Ball and Wonderworld, which is a
which is more difficult to get through. Technical difficulties concerning audio or Ball and Wonderworld itself.
Ball and Wonderworld itself.
Correct.
It took me maybe 30 minutes to fix my audio difficulties from our last VOD. And it took me 2.5 hours to hit a wall in Ball and Wonderworld.
Yeah.
So, but we play it every Monday, so check us out when we play it. It's a lot of fun. The game's garbage, but we say nice things about it sometimes. Or you don't need to do any of that because we are not your dads.